The rain had been falling all evening over New York City, painting the tall glass towers with streaks of silver. The Turner mansion stood like a palace on the edge of Central Park, its golden lights glowing through the storm. Tonight was not an ordinary night, it was the annual Turner celebration, the event where billionaires, politicians, artists, and world-famous athletes gathered under one roof. Michael Turner, the host, was a man whose name appeared daily in business papers. He was one of the richest men in America, known for his sharp tongue, his confidence, and his ability to laugh at challenges that seemed impossible. People admired his money, but they also feared his pride. Inside the mansion, the grand hall glittered like a dream. A crystal chandelier the size of a car hung from the ceiling. The floor shined like polished ice. Music from a live orchestra floated in the air, soft but powerful, guiding people as they talked and laughed. Waiters in white gloves carried trays filled with golden glasses of wine, delicate cakes, and dishes that looked like art. In one corner of the hall stood Anna, one of Michael's most trusted maids. She was in her late 40s, her hair tied neatly, her uniform perfectly pressed, and her movements careful. Anna had worked in the mansion for nearly 20 years. She never missed a day, never raised her voice, and never asked for more than her small pay. For her, life had always been about sacrifice, and her greatest reason for working so hard was her daughter, Emily. Emily was 19 years old, slim, with thoughtful brown eyes and dark hair tied back in a ponytail. She wore a simple blue dress, one she had borrowed from a neighbor for this night. She was not supposed to be in the hall, but Anna had no one to watch her at home, and Michael had allowed her to stay quietly at the side. Emily stood close to her mother, holding a small notebook in her hand, scribbling little sketches and words while watching the world of luxury around her. She looked nothing like the guests, who wore diamonds and silk, but there was something in her calm eyes that made her stand out. Michael Turner noticed her. From his seat at the long table, he lifted his glass and spoke loudly, his voice echoing through the room. "Anna," he called, his eyes sharp but amused. "Is this your daughter?" The guests turned their heads. Anna froze for a second before answering nervously, "Yes, Mr. Turner. This is Emily." Michael leaned back in his chair, smiling, his white teeth shining under the lights. "Well, Emily, you've stepped into a world far above your own tonight. Tell me, do you dream of becoming one of them?" He gestured toward his rich guests, his tone half serious, half teasing. Emily looked at him with steady eyes. "No, sir. I don't dream of being them. I dream of being me." The guests chuckled, surprised by her confidence. Anna's heart raced. She wished her daughter had stayed silent. Michael raised an eyebrow, impressed but also entertained. "You have spirit," he said. Then, with a laugh that carried across the hall, he added, "Tell you what. Let's make tonight more interesting. Win a challenge, and I'll give you $100 million. The laughter from the guests roared. Some clapped, some shook their heads, thinking it was only one of Michael's dramatic jokes. He was known to say such things to amuse his parties. Anna bowed her head quickly. "Mr. Turner, please," she is only a child, but Emily's voice cut softly through the noise. "What's the challenge?" The laughter died down. A wave of silence spread. For the first time, Michael Turner stopped smiling. He looked at Emily, searching her face. He had expected her to blush, to run behind her mother, to shake her head in fear. But instead, she stood there calmly, her simple dress shining only because of the confidence she carried. "You're serious?" Michael asked, narrowing his eyes. Emily nodded. Yes. You made a promise in front of everyone. If I win, you give me 100 million. The guests whispered. Some found her boldness amusing, others thought it was foolish. Anna's hands shook as she tried to signal her daughter to stop, but Emily kept her eyes on the billionaire. Michael laughed again, though this time the sound was not as strong. Very well. If you want the challenge, you shall have it. He snapped his fingers. David. His assistant, David Clark, a tall man in a gray suit, stepped forward. Yes, sir. Bring the box, Michael ordered. David left the hall and returned minutes later carrying a small wooden box, about the size of a book. It was dark brown, with carvings of strange symbols on its surface. The guests leaned forward in curiosity. Many of them had seen this box before at Michael's parties. It was a puzzle box, built by an old craftsman in Europe. It had no keyhole, no visible lock, only hidden mechanisms inside. For years, Michael had used it to entertain guests. Professors, inventors, even world-famous scientists had tried to open it but failed. Michael placed the box on the table. He leaned back again, confidence returning to his face. Here is the challenge. Open this box. If you do, the money is yours. The room fell silent. Some guests smiled knowingly, sure that the maid's daughter would fail within minutes. Others whispered, impossible, she'll never do it. Anna felt her knees weaken. She wanted to grab Emily's hand and pull her away, but she couldn't move. Emily stepped forward slowly. She placed her notebook aside and put her hands gently on the wooden box. She traced the carvings with her fingers, studying each curve, each line. The room watched as if time itself had stopped. Michael smirked. Don't worry, girl. No one has ever succeeded. But Emily didn't look at him. Her eyes were on the box. She lifted it slightly, shook it softly, and listened. Inside, something faint shifted. Her sharp ears caught the click of hidden pieces. She tilted it again, pressing one corner, then another. She paused, closed her eyes for a moment, and imagined the design in her mind. She thought of the pattern like a map, the carvings like a story written in secret language. Minutes passed. The guests grew restless. Some chuckled, waiting for her to give up. Others leaned forward, curious. Anna pressed her hands together in silent prayer. Then suddenly click. The sound was small, almost like a whisper, but in the silent hall, it was louder than thunder. Emily slowly slid one side of the box open. The crowd gasped. She pressed again, another click followed, and another side opened. The billionaire's smile froze. His eyes widened. With calm hands, Emily turned the box once more, pressed the final corner, and the lid lifted open. Inside lay a golden key, shining under the chandelier light. The hall erupted in shock. Some guests clapped in disbelief, some covered their mouths, and some shouted, "Impossible!" Michael Turner sat still, his face pale. The laughter he had released earlier now seemed to choke him. His proud smile had vanished. He stared at Emily as if the world around him had betrayed him. Emily held the open box in her hands. She looked at the billionaire and spoke softly, but her words carried more weight than the grandest speech. You said if I win, the money is mine. The Turner mansion had never been so silent. For a few long moments, every person in the grand hall stood frozen. The sound of the orchestra had stopped, the clinking of glasses had stopped, even whispers had died. All eyes were fixed on the girl in the simple blue dress holding the open wooden box. Emily's hands were steady as she revealed the golden key inside. Her calm face looked almost unreal in that sea of shocked expressions. She was not smiling, she was not trembling, she was simply present, as if this had always been her place. Anna, her mother, pressed a hand against her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. She had seen her daughter solve puzzles at home, unlock old locks, repair broken radios, and study codes in books borrowed from the public library. But never in her life had she thought Emily could outsmart the impossible box, the one that had made professors shake their heads in defeat. Michael Turner, the Billionaire host, leaned forward in his chair. His face had turned pale. His jaw tightened as he stared at the box, then at Emily. The laughter he had released only minutes ago now echoed back in his mind like a cruel reminder. He, a man of wealth and pride, had underestimated the maid's daughter. The guests broke the silence with sudden noise. "She did it," one man gasped. "Unbelievable," another woman whispered. "I've seen 10 different scientists try that thing," shouted a famous athlete, his eyes wide. Phones came out quickly, flashes lit the hall, and voices rose. The moment was being captured from every corner. Social media would spread it faster than wildfire. Emily closed the box gently and placed it on the table in front of Michael. She met his eyes with calm respect, not arrogance. "You said if I win, the money is mine." Her words carried across the hall, soft yet unshakable. Michael opened his mouth but no sound came. He felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing on him. His empire was built on power and reputation, and his reputation was built on never breaking his word. If he laughed it off now, the world would call him a liar. If he refused, his empire would feel the crack of mistrust. For the first time in many years, he felt cornered not by another billionaire, not by a powerful politician, but by a 19-year-old girl with nothing but a blue dress and quiet courage. He forced a smile, though his voice shook slightly. "Impressive. Very impressive." The guests applauded, some loudly, some with nervous claps. The orchestra began to play again, though uncertainly. But Michael's smile did not reach his eyes. Inside, a storm was rising. As the evening continued, guests approached Emily and Anna with questions. "How did you do it? Was it luck? Do you study codes?" Emily answered politely but shortly. "It was not luck. The carvings were a code. I just listened carefully." Anna kept close to her daughter, afraid that someone might mock her or twist her words. But surprisingly, many of the guests seemed fascinated, not cruel. They admired her calmness, her intelligence, the way she carried herself. On the other side of the hall, Michael Turner sat surrounded by his inner circle. His assistant David leaned close. "Sir," David whispered, "the cameras caught everything. By morning, this will be all over the news. They'll ask if you paid her." Michael's eyes narrowed. "I will handle it. But I don't like being cornered." David hesitated. "If you refuse, your reputation I know," Michael snapped, then lowered his voice. "She's clever, but she's just a girl. Let her enjoy the moment. We'll see if she still stands tomorrow." He rose from his seat and crossed the hall toward Emily and Anna. The crowd parted for him like a tide. His tall figure loomed over them, his expression unreadable. "Well done," he said smoothly. "You've given my party something to remember." Emily bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, sir." Michael studied her. He expected pride or nervousness, but he saw neither. She simply stood, waiting. That calmness unsettled him more than arrogance would have. "Tomorrow," he said slowly, "we will speak again. I am a man of my word. But such a promise requires formal steps. Money of that size cannot be given like candy. Do you understand?" "Yes," Emily replied. "I will wait." Michael nodded once, then turned away, hiding the shadow in his eyes. By dawn the next morning, Emily's name was everywhere. Maid's daughter wins Billionaire's challenge. Young girl outsmarts Turner puzzle box. Will Michael Turner pay $100M? News channels repeated the story every hour. Photographs of Emily holding the open box spread across the internet. Videos from phones at the party were shared millions of times. Some people called her lucky, others called her a genius. Many called her a symbol of hope that even someone from the quiet corners of life could rise in a room full of power. Anna sat at their small apartment's kitchen table, trembling as she watched the news. Emily was calm, sitting beside her with the same notebook, sketching lines and codes. "Emily," Anna whispered, "this is too much. People will come, they will ask questions. Are you ready for this?" Emily smiled softly. "Mom, all I did was open a box. The rest is noise." Anna shook her head. "No, you changed something. You made him look small. That man has never looked small before." Emily paused at her notebook, her pen resting on the page. She didn't reply, but she felt the truth in her mother's words. The billionaire's dilemma. At his office in the tallest tower downtown, Michael Turner sat at his desk, the golden key from the puzzle box lying before him. Reporters crowded the building's entrance. His phone buzzed non-stop with calls from investors, partners, and even government officials. "Michael," one partner said over the phone, "if you don't pay her, people will question your honesty. That will cost you more than $100 million. Another warned, "This girl has become a public symbol overnight. Handle this wrong, and she could turn the people against you." Michael slammed the phone down. He was not afraid of losing money, he had more than enough. What he feared was losing control. For years, he had been the one laughing at others' attempts. Now the world was laughing at him. David entered the office carefully. "Sir, the trust papers can be prepared today. It will be safer if you pay her quickly. The press is waiting." Michael leaned back in his chair, his face hard. "Fine. Prepare the documents. But understand this: she may have opened my box, but she will not open my world. This is not her story. It's mine." David nodded, though quietly he wondered if the world agreed. That evening, Michael invited Emily and Anna to his office. The place was larger than their entire apartment, with glass walls showing the city lights. A long wooden table stretched across the room, covered in papers. Michael stood at the window, his hands behind his back, his figure tall and commanding. When they entered, he turned with a polite smile. "Emily, Anna," he greeted smoothly. "I keep my word. Today, I sign the papers that will make you one of the wealthiest young women in the country." Anna's knees trembled. She had never stood in such a place. Emily remained calm, her notebook still in her hand. Michael sat at the table, pen in hand, and signed the documents. He slid them across to Emily. "Here. The trust will be set in your name. The funds will be secured. Congratulations." Cameras flashed from the corner. Michael had invited select reporters to witness the signing. He wanted the world to see him as a man of honor, not defeat. Emily accepted the papers with steady hands. "Thank you, sir." Michael leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You are clever, but cleverness fades if not guided. Be wise. Do not mistake a single victory for power." Emily looked at him, her voice quiet but firm. "Power is not in wealth, sir. It is in what you do with it." For the second time, Michael felt his chest tighten. That calm voice, that simple truth, it carried more weight than the speeches of men he had paid millions to advise him. The cameras captured the moment, the billionaire signing away his promise, the maid's daughter receiving it with grace. By nightfall, the world had seen it. And Michael Turner, though smiling for the cameras, walked back to his window with a pale face. For the first time, he wondered if he had laughed at the wrong person. The signing of the trust papers should have ended the story. Michael Turner had kept his word, Emily had received the promise, and the cameras had captured it all. But the truth was different. The night Emily opened the puzzle box was only the beginning. The next morning, the newspapers filled their front pages with her picture. Her name appeared in bold letters, larger than the billionaire's. Emily, Maid's daughter, wins Turner's $100 million challenge. Across television screens, her calm face appeared with clips of her quiet words, "You said if I win, the money is mine." Anna sat at the kitchen table again, this time with reporters waiting outside their small apartment. Emily poured her mother tea and looked at the window, listening to the noise below. People were cheering her name, neighbors who once hardly noticed them were calling with congratulations, and strangers were sending letters of support. Anna's hands shook as she held the teacup. "Emily, this is too much. You must be careful. Fame comes with eyes watching every move." Emily sat across from her, notebook in hand, calm as always. "Mom, I didn't look for fame. I only solved a puzzle. What comes next, we decide." But Anna knew that wasn't true. Fame had a life of its own. It came like a wave, loud, fast, and impossible to control. The world reacts in schools. Children spoke of Emily as if she were a hero. Teachers told their students that brains could be stronger than money. On social media, thousands of people shared messages like, "If Emily can do it, so can we." Even people Michael had once mocked at his parties now spoke openly. A scientist who had failed to open the puzzle box told a reporter, "I studied it for hours and gave up. She must have a mind sharper than any of us guessed." Emily became a symbol overnight, not because of the money, but because of the way she carried herself. People saw her not as greedy but as graceful, someone who did not ask for the challenge but accepted it with calm courage. But not everyone celebrated. Some called her lucky, others whispered that Michael had staged the whole thing for attention. And behind the scenes, Michael himself was restless. Michael Turner's unease in his glass office high above the city. Michael stared at the morning papers. Emily's face was everywhere. Her story had reached beyond New York, across America, even across the world. Headlines from London, Paris, and Tokyo all spoke of the maid's daughter who humbled a billionaire. Michael's pride burned. He had been the center of power, the man whose name was spoken with both respect and fear. Now his name was tied to hers, and worse, in every story he was the one who looked small. David, his assistant, entered quietly. "Sir, the news cycle will pass. Give it a week. People move on." Michael shook his head. "This is not just news. This girl is being turned into a symbol. They are painting me as the man who laughed and lost. I built my empire on strength. I cannot let this stand. David hesitated. What do you plan to do? Michael's eyes narrowed. Watch her. Learn about her. Every strength has a weakness. We will find hers. Meanwhile, Emily did not waste time. Within weeks, she had begun using part of the money. Not for cars, not for clothes, but for something else. On a quiet street in Brooklyn, she rented an empty building and started turning it into a community center. She named it the Key House, after the golden key from the puzzle box. It was a place where children could come after school to study, play, and dream. She filled its rooms with books, computers, and puzzles. Anna helped clean and paint the walls, while neighbors volunteered their time. Soon, children filled the hall, laughing, reading, solving games Emily designed for them. For many of those kids, it was the first time they had touched a computer, the first time they had someone believe they were capable of more. When reporters asked Emily why she chose this, she simply said, "I was given a chance. Now I want others to have one too." Her words spread again, simple but powerful. Michael's pale face. One evening, Michael Turner himself decided to visit the center. He arrived in a black car, his presence drawing attention immediately. Cameras followed him as he stepped inside. Children were scattered around the hall, some reading, some working on puzzles Emily had designed. When they saw Michael, they whispered his name with both awe and fear. Emily walked toward him, her steps calm, her blue dress neat though plain. She greeted him politely. "Mr. Turner." Michael studied her. "I see you've been busy." Emily smiled softly. "Yes. This place matters more to me than the money." Michael glanced at the children, then back at her. His face grew pale, not from anger but from something deeper, realization. He had thought money would overwhelm her, that she would drown in luxury. Instead, she had used it to rise even higher, not in wealth but in meaning. And in doing so, she had made him look even smaller. David whispered in his ear, "Sir, people are watching." Michael forced a smile for the cameras. "Impressive, Emily. Very impressive." He shook her hand, though his grip was tight, his jaw clenched. The photographs showed him smiling, but inside, his heart was heavy. For the second time, the girl had turned his laughter into silence. That night, back in his mansion, Michael walked through the halls alone. The laughter of the party seemed far away now, replaced by whispers of doubt. He thought of Emily's words, "Power is not in wealth. It is in what you do with it." For years, he had believed the opposite, that power was in numbers, towers, contracts. But now, people spoke more of her center than of his empire. Children admired her more than they admired him. Even some of his own staff whispered about her with respect. He stared at the puzzle box, now empty, sitting on his desk. It felt like more than wood and carvings now. It felt like a mirror, reminding him of the night he lost more than a game. Emily's calm strength. Emily, however, did not think of victory. She rose each day before sunrise, walked to the center, and welcomed the children. She sat with them, taught them to read, guided them through puzzles, listened to their stories. She remembered how her own childhood had been quiet, with little beyond her mother's love. Now she gave others what she had once wished for. Anna often watched from the side, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. She knew her daughter was strong, but she also knew that power brought enemies. Michael Turner's pale face at the center had not escaped her notice. One evening, she told Emily, "Be careful, my child. You are rising too fast. Powerful people don't like to be reminded they can fall. Emily smiled and held her mother's hand. Don't worry, Mom. I am not against him. I am only for the children. Anna nodded but still prayed at night for her daughter's safety. Weeks turned into months. The key house grew. Donations came in from strangers inspired by Emily's story. Volunteers joined, teachers offered time, and even universities sent students to help. The small building became a movement. Michael Turner watched it all from a distance. His empire was still strong, but for the first time, he felt shadows creeping in. Investors questioned him, asking why his name was being overshadowed by a girl barely 20. At one board meeting, a partner said openly, "Michael, the people trust her more than they trust us. That should worry you." Michael's face hardened. He remembered his laughter, remembered her calm eyes, remembered how the box clicked open. Each memory was like a thorn in his pride. That night, staring at the city lights, he whispered to himself, "She has taken my silence once. She will not take it again." His reflection in the glass looked pale, older, uncertain. For the first time, Michael Turner began to fear not failure but irrelevance. And in another part of the city, Emily, unaware of his growing storm, closed her notebook after another long day at the center. She looked out at the children leaving with bright smiles, and her heart felt light. She had no towers, no empire, but she had something stronger, the quiet strength that had already shaken a billionaire. The shock of that night had not ended. It was only beginning. The morning sun fell over the big mansion, painting the walls with gold. It was the day of the final challenge. Everyone inside the house felt it. The air was thick with tension, like a rope pulled too tight. Michael sat at the long dining table, reading the paper but not really seeing the words. His mind kept circling back to the promise he had made. "Win this and I'll give you $100 million, he had said, laughing at the time. A silly game, a rich man's joke. Yet here they were, on the edge of that promise turning real. Taylor moved around the kitchen, preparing simple breakfast. Her hands were steady, but inside she was nervous. She kept stealing glances at her daughter, Emma. The girl sat quietly, eating toast, her face calm but her eyes bright with determination. "Eat well, Emma," Taylor whispered softly. "You'll need your strength." Emma smiled faintly. "I will, Mom." Michael lowered the newspaper. His sharp eyes studied Emma. The billionaire was not used to being challenged. His life had been a string of victories, deals closed, empires built. But something about this girl unsettled him. She was not afraid of him. She did not look at him like everyone else did, people who wanted something from him, or feared him. She looked at him like he was just another man. "You really think you can do it?" he asked suddenly. Emma turned to him. "Yes," she said simply. Michael gave a short laugh, but it did not carry much humor. Confidence is easy in words, harder in reality. Emma didn't reply. She finished her breakfast and stood. "I'm ready," she said. By mid-morning, the mansion buzzed with activity. Michael's assistants rushed in and out, setting up cameras, arranging chairs, calling guests. The billionaire had decided the challenge should be public. If he was going to keep his word or break it, people had to see. He had invited reporters, business friends, and even rivals. Word spread fast. By noon, cars rolled into the driveway one after another. Journalists with microphones, photographers with flashing cameras, and curious neighbors all came to see the unusual contest. Taylor felt small as she stood by the doorway, watching the crowd gather. She had never been around so many powerful people in her life. They wore expensive suits and carried themselves with pride, their voices loud, their laughter sharp. She worried they would crush her daughter with their presence. But Emma stood tall. Her simple dress, her clear eyes, and the quiet strength in her face made people notice her. Whispers passed through the crowd. "That's the maid's daughter," one man murmured. "She looks calm," another said. "Brave, too." Finally, Michael stepped forward. His commanding presence silenced the crowd. He lifted a hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his deep voice echoing, "you are here to witness something unusual. A challenge born from a moment of humor. I promised $100 million if this girl," he pointed at Emma, "could win. Most of you thought it was a joke. I thought it was, too. But she has pushed forward. She has surprised me. So today, we will see the end." Gasps ran through the room. People leaned forward, eager to know what the final challenge would be. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. He had thought long and hard. It had to be something not just about strength or luck. It had to test everything: mind, heart, courage. "The challenge," Michael announced, "is a debate. A battle of words and ideas." The crowd buzzed with surprise. Michael continued, "The topic is simple: what is true wealth? She will argue against me. If she convinces the audience more than I do, she wins." Taylor's heart stopped for a moment. A debate? Against Michael, a man who spoke to presidents and CEOs, who could bend rooms with his words. It seemed impossible. But Emma did not flinch. She stepped forward and nodded. "I accept." The debate began. Michael spoke first. His words were smooth, polished, heavy with authority. He talked about wealth as power, as freedom, as the ability to shape the world. He told stories of his childhood, of how he had built his empire, how money gave him the strength to help thousands of workers and families. The crowd nodded, impressed. When he finished, the room filled with applause. Then it was Emma's turn. She stood quietly for a moment, letting the silence settle. Her voice was softer than Michael's, but clear. "To me," she began, "true wealth is not measured in numbers. It is in the moments we share, the kindness we give, the love we receive." Her words cut through the air like a gentle wind. She spoke of her mother working late hours, smiling despite tiredness, teaching her to dream. She spoke of neighbors helping each other when times were hard. She told the crowd how she had learned that even small acts of kindness could be richer than gold. "Money can build houses," Emma said, "but it cannot build a home. Money can buy medicine, but it cannot give hope. Money can open doors, but it cannot open hearts." The crowd grew quiet. Some eyes shone with tears. Even the journalists lowered their pens for a moment, listening closely. Michael shifted in his seat. He was not used to being moved by words other than his own. Emma finished softly, "True wealth is when you can close your eyes and know you lived with love, honesty, and courage. That is something no money can buy." The silence that followed was deep, almost sacred. Then, slowly, clapping began. One person, then another, until the whole room was filled with thunderous applause. Michael's face was pale. His hand gripped the chair tightly. He had spoken like a king, but the girl had spoken like a heart. And hearts always win. Reporters rushed forward, shouting questions. Mr. Michael. Will you honor your promise? Michael raised a hand, silencing them. He looked at Emma, then at Taylor. His lips pressed into a thin line. A promise is a promise, he said finally. She won. Gasps and cheers filled the room. Cameras flashed. Taylor covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her face. Emma only stood still, her eyes steady, though her chest rose and fell quickly. Michael continued, his voice rougher now. She will have what I promised. But let it be known this day will be remembered. Not because of money, but because a girl, the daughter of a maid, taught us all the meaning of wealth. The crowd erupted. Some clapped, some cried, some shook their heads in disbelief. That night, when the guests had gone and the mansion was quiet again, Michael stood alone in his study. The papers on his desk seemed meaningless. The trophies on his shelves looked small. He thought about Emma's words, about wealth beyond money. For the first time in years, he questioned himself. Meanwhile, Taylor held Emma close in their small room upstairs. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Emma smiled tiredly. Mom, today we won. But not just the money. Something more. And in the silence of the night, mother and daughter felt richer than they had ever known. The night after the debate felt different in Michael's mansion. The rooms were quiet, yet the air carried the memory of what had happened. For many years, Michael had been the center of every gathering, the strongest voice, the man whose decisions shaped lives. But tonight, it was a young girl's words that echoed in every corner. Emma lay in bed, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Sleep would not come easily. She kept thinking of the crowd's faces, the way they had listened, the way their eyes softened when she spoke. For the first time, she felt she had given something bigger than herself to the world. Not money, not power, but truth. Her mother, Taylor, sat nearby. She could not stop smiling, though tears had dried on her cheeks. She had watched her daughter stand against a billionaire and win with nothing but honesty. For a mother, that was more than wealth, it was pride, love, and a kind of victory no one could take away. The next morning, the world outside the mansion had changed too. Newspapers carried the story on their front pages. Maid's daughter wins debate against billionaire. $100 million promise turns real. Young girl redefines wealth. Television shows replayed clips of Emma speaking, her voice calm, her eyes clear. Talk show hosts argued about the meaning of true wealth, quoting her words. On social media, thousands of people shared her speech. Strangers across the country felt touched by her courage. In the small town where Taylor's family came from, neighbors gathered around televisions, pointing proudly. That's Taylor's girl, they said. She showed the world something powerful. Inside the mansion, however, Michael was restless. He paced his study, his steps sharp against the marble floor. He had kept his promise. His lawyers had already begun transferring the funds to Taylor and Emma. But his mind was unsettled. Money had always been his shield, his tool, his weapon. With it, he commanded respect and fear. But now, he had been defeated not by wealth, but by a girl's heart. And the world had seen it. For the first time, Michael felt small. Later that afternoon, he called Taylor and Emma to his study. When they entered, Taylor's hands trembled slightly. She still felt out of place in such a grand room. Emma, however, walked calmly, her gaze steady. Michael looked at them for a long moment before speaking. The transfer is complete. The money is yours now. Taylor swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. But Michael shook his head slowly. "Don't thank me. I only did what I had to." "You earned it?" There was silence for a moment. Then Michael leaned forward. "Tell me, Emma. What will you do with it? 100 million is not a small thing. It changes people. It breaks some, lifts others. What will it do to you?" Emma thought for a moment before answering. "It will not change who I am. I will use it to help others. To make life better for my mom, for people who need it. That's what true wealth is." Michael's chest tightened. He had expected her to speak of houses, cars, travel, or fame. But she was steady, almost unshaken. Taylor added softly, "We don't need more than peace, health, and love. But we can use what you gave to spread those things." For the first time in many years, Michael felt his eyes sting. He turned away quickly, pretending to adjust the papers on his desk. Days turned into weeks, and life began to change. Taylor and Emma moved out of the small servant quarters. With some of the money, they bought a modest but beautiful home outside the city. It was not the largest house money could buy, but it was filled with light, warmth, and space to breathe. Taylor finally stopped working as a maid. She spent her mornings tending to a small garden and her afternoons reading or sewing. She smiled more often, her back straightening with new confidence. For years she had lived quietly in the shadows, but now she felt seen, respected, free. Emma started school again, but not just any school. She enrolled in a prestigious academy, her tuition easily covered. Teachers quickly saw her talent. She wasn't just smart, she carried wisdom beyond her years. Her classmates admired her, not for her money, but for her courage and kindness. But Emma did not stop there. She began small projects, funding books for children who couldn't afford them, paying for school supplies, even organizing food drives. She told her mother, "We have to use this money like seeds, not like stones. We must plant it in people's lives." Taylor could only smile with tears in her eyes. Meanwhile, Michael kept watching from afar. He read the news of what Emma and Taylor were doing. Every article, every photo, every headline reminded him of what he had lost and what he had gained. He found himself thinking about his own life. His mansion was still full of treasures, but they looked empty now. His business still made millions, but the joy of victory was gone. He realized he had spent years building walls of wealth but never bridges of meaning. One evening, unable to rest, he drove to the new house Taylor and Emma had bought. He did not call ahead, he simply arrived. Taylor was surprised to see him at the door. "Mr. Michael," she said softly. "May I come in?" he asked, his voice less sharp than usual. She nodded, stepping aside. Inside, the house felt warm. There were simple decorations, photos on the wall, and the smell of fresh bread. Emma sat at the table, her books open, her pen moving across the page. When she looked up and saw him, she smiled. "Hello, Mr. Michael." Michael felt a strange calm settle over him. He sat down, his hands folded. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke. "You both have changed me," he admitted quietly. "I thought I was the richest man in the room that day. But I wasn't. You showed me something money can't buy." Taylor's eyes softened. Emma leaned forward. "You can still change, Mr. Michael. You can still use what you have for something greater." Michael nodded slowly. He felt as though a heavy door inside him had opened. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. Michael began to support Emma's projects. At first, he gave small donations, but soon he invested more, funding schools, hospitals, and programs for children. He no longer did it for headlines or reputation. He did it because he had learned a lesson he would never forget. The world took notice. Articles that once praised Michael for his wealth now praised him for his generosity. Yet every time he was asked about the change, he answered the same way: "It wasn't me. It was a maid's daughter who taught me what wealth really is." Years passed. Emma grew older, her dreams growing with her. She studied hard, becoming a voice for the people, a leader who spoke not for power but for truth. Taylor watched proudly, her heart full each day. Michael remained in their lives, not as a master or a billionaire, but as a friend. He often sat at their table, eating Taylor's bread, listening to Emma's plans, and smiling in ways he hadn't in decades. One evening, as the sun set and the three of them sat together, Emma said softly, "That day, when you laughed and said, 'Win this and I'll give you $100 million, you didn't know what you were starting.'" Michael chuckled, shaking his head. "No, I didn't. But I'm glad I said it. Because it brought me here." And in that quiet room, filled with light and laughter, they all understood something deeply: true wealth was never about money. It was about hearts that touched, lives that changed, and the courage to see beyond gold.